Ira Aldridge was a black American from New York who came to England in the early 19th century to follow his dream of becoming an actor, one that was impossible to pursue in his highly segregated slave-owning homeland. He was born in 1807 and died while on tour in Poland in 1867, and in the last few years of his life he made his home in Penge, marrying his second wife in St John's Church and buying a home in Hamlet Road near Crystal Palace, where you can see a blue plaque to him. I became interested in Aldridge through looking into 19th century popular entertainment and how it reflected the society of its day, specifically the impact of racism, the battles over slavery, and the development of so-called scientific racism, which graded peoples according to the colour of their skins and which was supposed to indicate their levels of intelligence, civilization, capacity, etc. And into all this walks a dignified young black man from a slave-owning society who gives the lie to all that pseudoscience by performing as Othello in one of Shakespeare's greatest works. If you think about it, if you think about what he was coming into and what he was actually achieving, it is absolutely mind-boggling. Wherever he appeared, and he performed all over England, he was met with enthusiasm by audiences and critical appreciation in the provinces. But in London itself, it was a different matter. While audiences were appreciative, the critics, particularly from the more elite end of the press, like the Times, were often very hostile and blatantly racist. He could not pronounce English, it was believed, because the shape of his lips prevented him. He was mocked as physically deformed when every pictorial representation of him from youth to age, one of which you can see behind me, every pictorial representation shows a fine physique and an expressive face. And for many years he was hounded from the London stage until managers were reluctant to engage him. We can only speculate as to why he met such hostility in London particularly, and why he had such a different reception from the critical acclaim he won elsewhere. It has been suggested that the very wealthy and powerful sugar barons of the West Indies, who were fighting a strong rearguard battle to retain slavery, despite a huge popular movement to abolish it, were behind this hostility. Aldridge, with his intelligence, skill and talent, knocked away one of their main justifications for slavery, that black people were incapable and needed white direction. And there was too the fact that he had married a white wife. Again, it was Aldridge overstepping the bounds. Certainly it is known that the West India interests, among other things, paid newspapers and magazines to publish articles favourable to themselves. Fake news and the influence of wealthy proprietors is not that new. You can deduce from the evidence of his career, including the type of roles that he played, that Aldridge was quite aware of his role as a pioneer, representing not the kind of grotesque black stereotype that became more and more an entertainment staple, you know, the kind of stupid minstrel figure, but the enslaved African, torn from his homeland, yet expressing power, authority and doomed love for his white wife, or the tragic West Indian rebel, vowing vengeance on the white society that had enslaved him. He never, to my knowledge, played Uncle Tom in the many dramatic variations of that novel, but he did play Harriet Beecher Stowe's other, far less known but far more militant hero, Dread. Dread was based on an actual rebel slave leader, Nat Turner, who was eventually hanged. Aldridge played this in Ireland with great verve. Of course, Ireland itself was then undergoing its own struggle with British rule. But while audiences appear to have been enthused, the structure of the play and its semi-mystical biblical language was heavily criticised. And as Aldridge became more established as an actor, he was keen to extend the types of roles that a black actor like himself could play. He went as far as to commission a rewrite of Titus Andronicus, in which the bloodthirsty and villainous Aaron becomes the hero of the piece. Unfortunately, the text of this, like so many other popular dramas of the period, has not survived, but a reviewer described his performance as excellent, gentle and impassioned by turns, now burning with jealousy, fierce with rage, and then all tenderness and emotion in the gentler passages with his infant. In the interim, he had toured extensively across Europe, France, Germany, Belgium, Netherlands, Poland, and as far afield as Moscow. Indeed, his success in Russia was so great that he spent much of his final years, late 1850s, early 1860s, performing there and in nearby territories. Across the continent, his portrayal of Shylock resonated particularly, for as one contemporary critic explained, he understands like no other how to portray the full bitterness that the Jew feels. Aldrich himself comes from a mistreated race. But by now, the relentless touring was beginning to take its toll. He returned to England, prosperous and successful, taking out British citizenship in 1863 and buying property in the then fashionable area near the relocated Crystal Palace. His first wife had died and he married his second wife, Amanda von Brandt, by whom he already had 3 children. Shortly before he died, while on tour in Poland, he was considering returning to perform in an America in which slavery had finally been abolished. And it's a tragedy that he never made that trip back. His obituary in the leading English theatrical magazine of the day could give him no greater praise than to say that his career had not only enhanced the credit of English literature, but even the reputation of our national poet. Now he did all this as the perennial outsider, continually stepping outside the boundaries he was meant to be confined to, in an often hostile and racist climate. The integrity, strength and stamina of that undertaking is utterly impressive, and his influence has continued to live on in the generations of other black actors that he inspired. There's an Ira Aldrich Theatre at Howard University. His portrait hangs in the Old Vic, where he made one of his earliest appearances. There's a chair dedicated to him at the Memorial Theatre in Stratford. But it's not the monuments that are the real point. It's the testimony to what one individual can do to achieve equality on his own terms, to fight down racism and blaze a trail for others to follow.